how big is this God? How big can God handle my stuff? Really? I still struggle. I would be real that to this day, sometimes I think my own struggles are too big for God. That's a lie. We know that. But it still feels like it sometimes. My stuff is so big, not even God can handle it. Ugh. We also live in a world where people have freedom of choice. And God has given us freedom of choice, or we would not have a relationship of unconditional love available to us. So we live in this fallible world where people make choices that we sometimes don't like. And I still have to trust that God has a plan for all of that together. Here's one of my biggest things I like to say about living with a disability. The disability is challenging. Yes, I went through eye therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, surgeries. And all those things took me out of the social life. I had to go through these things. But the biggest disability isn't living with all the stuff I have to deal with every day. I still have to do exercises. I still have to take my pills to keep me balanced. Neurological, well, no, not neurological, but in my body, balance, being healthy enough to go live life. It takes me 2 to 3 times more energy to get through the day than the average person. So I have to be very careful about my energy output and prepare myself to go live a day every single day. I can't just pop out of bed and run to work. I have to take the pills, eat a good breakfast. And stretch. Oh yeah, stretching is very important to me so I can actually physically function this life. But that's still not the hardest part about living with a disability. The hardest part about living with a disability is other people's opinions. That's the hardest disability to live with. Other people's opinions. And there's still a belief system in society to this day that if your body doesn't function right, your brain doesn't function right. And only after people start to talk to me do they realize I have just ruined their their assumption about me and how my brain works. That is the biggest thing I have to battle whenever I meet somebody new in this life. And I really get tired. I get worn out. And so that's probably why I have a small group of friends, because once I have become really good friends with somebody, they stay in my life because I really appreciate the people in my life who can see me as a whole person, not just the disability, but they see all of me, my spirit, my soul, my mind, my emotions. They see the whole package. And that is a beautiful gift that my friends give me, which I'm so thankful for that, because there are a lot of people who don't have that ability. I already know that. And so, again, my options for friends are pretty small because a lot of people don't have that ability to see a whole person, even through the disability.
It was so important what you brought up. I think that's an important thing for everybody to hear, just how your experience with that automatic assumption, for example.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So since I deal with people's judgments, is really what they are, I have to remember the words of Jesus. They know not what they do. Jesus said that when he hung on the cross. So if Jesus can say it, well, he's the Son of God. He can forgive a lot faster than I can. Jesus can forgive. He's given me the power to forgive people for their ignorance, basically, is what I'm having to do. And I am an introvert, so I do have to be alone anyway to recharge my batteries. That part is true. But I feel like I'm more alone than most people. I have to really rely on God to give me a sense of belonging, sense of identity, a sense of being grounded to something other than just floating out there in the real world. And also, since I understand loneliness, when I see other people who are alone or frustrated, I pick up on that stuff because I've been through my own trials and tribulations with aloneness. I see in other people. And when I do, I step into their lives to say, how can I help you? How can I support you? I know what it is to be sick and lay in bed for days going, does anybody know how horrible I'm feeling? Well, I got to be brave enough to tell people. That's the first thing. And so as I notice other people who are lonely, I want to step into their life and check on them. And rather than saying, what can I do for you? Which is a really vague question. I offer, can I sit here and talk to you? Can I give you a hug? If somebody's not doing well in life for whatever reason, they're sick, car accident, having a bad day, I offer to bring them flowers or chocolate or a meal. So rather than say, what can I do for you? It's hard to think when you're in an emotional crisis or emotionally worn down. To be given options helps so much. And I'm not going to say every time someone responds to me with a positive answer, that's fine. But I know I've done my part to support them. And maybe that's all they needed, was to know that somebody even acknowledged that they're having a struggle. So I would say, because I've been through so much struggle and heartache, I'm not afraid of other people's struggles and heartache.
Yeah. And that's really good tip, by the way, just for everybody too. I think about giving the options. And for just the fact that reaching out like that shows that someone cares.
Right. I will say that probably till my middle or later 30s. So I've been considering myself a Christian for 20 years. And I went through a faith crisis of wondering if I really was a Christian. Was I really walking with God, right? Was it really, how big is this God? How big can God handle my stuff? Really? I still struggle. I would be real that to this day, sometimes I think my own struggles are too big for God. That's a lie. We know that. But it still feels like it sometimes. My stuff is so big, not even God can handle it. Ugh. So I was going through my faith crisis in my later 30s. I got tired of pretending. I got tired of trying to look like a good Christian, serve in the church, talk the right Christian language, hang out with the Christian people. I got tired. And I also got tired of not being supported as a person in the church, too. It's the biggest reason why I left the church in my later 30s. And there was a time in 5 months, I thought going to church made me a Christian. It took me 5 months to pull that apart, where going to church and being a Christian are two different things. In 5 months to figure that out. And finally I said, okay, God, I'm done. Forget it. Time out. I'm done. I walk away. And I didn't talk to God on a conscious level for several months. And finally one day I just said, okay, I give up. God, this is how I feel. This is how you screwed up my life. This is what you did wrong. And I gave him a couple F-bombs. Let's just get real. I gave God a couple F-bombs, but you know what? He can handle it. I'm not really worried about God. And I told him everything just was not working. And I thought, all right, here comes the lightning. Here comes the lightning bolt. I'm going to be fried. Talk about performance oriented. Oh my word. I thought, here comes that lightning bolt. You know what? It never came. Instead, my trust in God grew because I could pour my heart out to him without there being any consequence. And that's really, I think, when my relationship with God really started. That's when I started to allow him to be the Lord of my life in certain areas. You know, I still have troubles to this day of trusting God. And God knows it. I know it. And I still have to consciously choose to trust God in certain areas of my life. I will say that my walk with God has not been pain-free. It has not been easy. It has not been fun. It has not been super prosperous, meaning materialistically speaking. But God does not promise easy. He promises grace. And the grace only comes from him. And the grace only comes when we need it, not early. He doesn't give it to you early. God is not going to come sooner than you need him to. You cannot manipulate God. No matter what you do, no matter how many resources you go through, no matter how many classes you go through, workshops, praying the right prayers, you cannot manipulate God. You can't. It just doesn't work. I've never read that in the Bible. I've seen people in the Bible try to manipulate God, but it doesn't work. So I say God's not a religious God. You can't control him. You can't want to make him happen, do certain things. He does not need us to behave a certain way for him to love us. He's not waiting to strike us down. You don't have to perform correctly. There's a fear of the Lord, but it's not being afraid of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is wanting to stand in awe before the presence of the Lord and just saying, wow, God, you are so magnificent, so fabulous. I don't go there very often, just so you know. I don't go to that place very often, but I wish I did. And out of that, soaking in the awesomeness of God and the magnificentness of God, I live in a much deeper place of peace. And so then when I'm living in that place of peace, I can treat other people better and give a whole lot more grace to other people.
That's such a great distinction between the kinds of fear and and how when you're talking about the fear, that's the more the awe experience. I mean, and then what you said right afterwards was the feeling of peace.
Yes.
So it's very different from like that other association with fear, but that kind of awe experience actually is a peaceful experience as well.
Right. My biggest concern is that whoever's listening is that they understand that, number one, they're not alone in their struggles. Number two, that there is a God that loves them. And number three, there is support for people. So my closing thought, I will say that my walk with God has not been easy. I still have times of anxiety, stress, and worry. And even in those times, I still have to choose to trust God. And it's not a reflex. I've been walking with God for 40 years. It's still not a reflex to trust God. But otherwise, it's easy to go into a dark place, depression kind of place. This isn't happening. That's not happening. My circumstances, I'm working too hard. Nothing's showing for all my efforts. Choosing to trust God gives me hope. Like I said, gives me encouragement. And I will say, even as a Christian, I have my empty days. I feel like, so what am I doing? How am I going to do this? I'm so alone. It's just challenging. And not to say I don't have good in my life. I have a lot of good in my life. I'm very thankful. I have a roof over my head. I have food in the cupboard. I have a car that's paid off. I have the freedom to choose where I want to go. Of any of the countries in the world, the United States is the most accessible country for people with physical disabilities. I think I have a very, very good life in the physical realm and also emotionally and socially. But I still kind of occasionally have the dark places or the futile feeling. The futile feeling does show up every now and then of why bother, why try. And those are the times in the darkness I have to remember that God still is there to hang on to.
I'm curious if you have a particular tip for sort of like a first step someone could take when they're feeling sort of that futility.
Oh, absolutely. For everybody, it's a little different. I will say for me, if I feel kind of blasé or like whatever, I pull out my Bible to read some truth, to feel some truth going inside of me. Exercise does help remove some of that heavy cloud. The harder you work, the more you work up a sweat. You're actually moving things chemically inside your body so that depression can shift out. Sometimes I call somebody I really trust to share my stuff with, just to touch base with someone, to know I'm not alone in my struggle, to know that people can empathize with me. Because by sharing to be vulnerable, by choosing to be vulnerable with someone, I'm actually giving them a gift to
Absolutely.
know that I trust them. And then they get to choose how they want to respond to me, whether it's encouragement, listening ear, whatever it is. I also have a journal by my bed to write down what went well in the day for me. I can't call it a grateful journal because I'm not hip. I don't like the word grateful. I mean, I like the word grateful in the sense of it's a good word to have in our vocabulary. But for me to try to feel grateful over every little thing, it's just so much work. I like to write down what went well in the day. But interestingly enough, as I write my little paragraph about what went well, then I find I am grateful for what just happened. It can be something as simple as someone giving me their grocery cart in the parking lot before I walk into the store. I'm like, wow, thank you for even acknowledging my presence next to you and giving me a grocery cart. It can be as a little bit bigger that my boyfriend planned the meals for the camp out and he's making dinner for us. He wants to make dinner. That's important to him to make dinner over the open grill. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I could if I had to. I'll figure it out. But I'm just thankful that he wants to do that. What else? Oh, like my birthday. I'm in my birthday season right now. My birthday season is about a month long. People will take me out or whatever. And I'm just thankful that people want to reach into my life to bless me with something. That's a positive thing in my life. So it can be anything that went well. Oh, even my cat who has arthritis. She got her first shot for arthritis yesterday. I'm also giving her some little chewy things. She loves them. I'm so thankful she loves them. I don't have to force them down her throat. She loves them. Something is working right for me and the cat. So when the cat feels better, she doesn't meow so much in pain, and therefore it's easier for me to live my life without the cat constantly meowing. That's a good thing for me. I'm not saying you got to be all grateful and thankful and things are great all the time. They're not. Let's get real. They're not. But to remember what went right.
So glad I asked you that question because I think those were all really useful possible steps for people to start. But I also really liked that you brought up that when you said I don't like the word grateful and then you described the practice. I think that that's really important to remember sometimes that we can sort of engage with things as fit for us, and look at how that then leads to it's so fruitful for you, even though you went in saying I don't like the word grateful, but then it has such meaning for you in the way that you've developed it. So I think that's actually just a good model for in general doing practices.
Oh, good. I'm glad because trying to feel grateful, it's like, I'm supposed to just step into gratefulness. I can't just step into grateful. I have to think about what happened. I have to remind myself of the goodness. And out of reminding myself of the goodness of the day, then I can feel the gratefulness.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I think that your insight you shared was really, really helpful. And I really appreciate how you really are so real with the experiences that you shared, so real and specific in what you shared with us today.
Well, I'm always glad to share my story. I've gone through enough healing, enough through my journey that I found some confidence in this life. So I just hope that my story not only encourages people, inspires people, but to help motivate them to go to the next level for whatever that means for them.